No, but I hear the voice. I think it's my grandpa. Maybe, I don't know. Let me check. And I still remember her huge brown eyes looking at me shocked, because that was not the first time it happened. So my friend, my best friend at the time, she called my mom and she told me the story. So I heard my parents talking on one of the evenings in the kitchen. They locked the door, but I heard them that maybe I would need some psychiatric help. And the minute I heard that, I thought, that's it. I'm not talking about it anymore. I got scared. And you can imagine that was late 80s. And obviously, you know, I didn't want to end up in a psychiatry clinic, because at that time, it's just scary. But like I said, I always had my intuition was very, very strong always. And I have made a very special connection with my grandpa, my mother's dad, that I still consider him to be my guardian. He passed away when I was 6, and they didn't let me go to the funeral because they thought it's going to traumatize me. But I was looking out of the window and I saw the cars coming and, you know, the coffin and in his face. And then I realized he's not, I could feel his soul. Only now as an adult, I realized that I was able to pick up on the soul and things like that. But back in the day, when I was 6, 7, 5, I did not realize what was happening around me at all. But I always knew that there's something that I'm here for. And there's a purpose for me to be able to see things like that. And luckily, I have found courage and my wings to fly. And I have come back to my authentic self in my late 30s. I was very successful at my corporate job. I've led huge tenders in sales on a national level in Canada, and also working with companies like FBI out of the United States, selling them software. So I have grown significantly in the sales field, but for the past 3 years in my corporate world, I felt miserable. Even though I was very successful, very good commission checks, amazing benefits, I felt miserable. I felt that I'm not doing what I'm here for. And to the point, I could not sit and write an email. My body was aching. I have developed anxiety and insomnia at that time. And then I've asked my inner self and my higher self, please tell me, why am I experiencing this? And I have received a very vivid dream that I'm not fulfilling my purpose of why am I here in this lifetime. And then that weekend, my friends and I, my husband, my family, we went to a cottage for a weekend to have fun. And then all of a sudden I started crying and explaining to everybody that, oh my God, I'm going to leave my job because I want to do this. I want to help people with my spiritual abilities. And they go like, are you crazy, Layla? Seriously, you're going to leave your job? And I was crying hysterically, explain why you're not understanding what I'm saying. I'm not here to do sales. I'm not here to do marketing. I'm here to help people. I've been given. So anyways, long story short, it took me a couple of years to find that bravery. And finally, I've left the corporate world and I started seeing clients on a full-time basis my first week off. I was planning to take a couple of months off and see how I'm going to do this. But guess what? I had no break. And right away, I had people messaging me and coming to me to see me. What are those abilities? And why am I seeing something that my family doesn't see? My friends and circle of people around me could not see or hear what I did. It was very, very scary for me because I had nobody to talk to about things like that. Seeing my grandfather who has passed, hearing him and other beings, and the judgment of the society at that time and closed-mindedness of people at that time did not allow me to go anywhere to consult about the visions that I'm receiving. So thankfully today, we are so lucky to be in the world of new era for people like us and spiritually awakening people. I'm so, so happy to see it, what's happening today. I'm very delighted to see that people, more and more people are opening up and realizing that there's more than just a physical body and everyday, day-to-day life. I want to share a couple of stories with you from my childhood. When I was 4 or 5 years old, I was crying a lot at night, asking my mom, Mama, why do I have to die? What's the purpose of this life? Why are we born? What's the purpose to be born and then die? My mom was shocked because she was not spiritual at all, and she had no answer for me. She just would tell me, you're too young to think about death. Just go to bed and sleep. But I remember waking up at night and wondering, why am I here? There has to be a reason. And one night I heard her calling her friends and asking if their kids asking questions like that. And obviously nobody, I think she heard an answer no. And I've realized that something is going on. So I started to write poems. And I still have that little book of my poems asking about the life and the purpose. And today, when I'm reading my poems from when I was 7, 8, maybe 9, the minute I started writing the poems. I cannot believe how nostalgic and deep those poems are coming from a 7, 8, 9-year-old girl. So it's fascinating. I think, and I'm certain that at that time, my soul remembered my previous lives. And I was just wondering why I'm doing this again and again. Couple of things I also want to share with you, that I was able to predict a lot of things as a child and a teenager. I would just randomly say things and they would come true. For example, in high school, we were walking with my girlfriends and there was new bodyguard, like new security guard in our high school, a young guy just starting up. First day, we were walking by him and I told my friend, I looked at her and I said, you're gonna marry him. She goes, what? I don't even know this guy. I go, you're gonna marry him. Just watch it. Guess what she did after 10 years. And now they have 3 boys, 3 kids. So knowing that nobody else around me could really understand what I feel and see and experience, I have closed up for many, 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 many years. And one of the reasons why is so I'm going to tell you a little story. It's a bit spooky. My friend and I had a dinner after school. We were grade 1 or grade 2. And we were home alone in my apartment. My mom went to buy bread or something, so she left us for like half an hour. We were chatting, having dinner, laughing. And then I hear this voice, Layla, Layla. And I'm like, without a delay, I'm looking at my friend and I'm telling her, wait a minute, I'll be back, somebody's calling me. She goes, what do you mean? I go, I have to go to that bedroom because somebody's calling me. I was so certain, and without a doubt, I was going there. She goes, Layla, there's nobody there. We're home alone. And I said, no, but I hear the voice. I think it's my grandpa. Maybe, I don't know. Let me check. And I still remember her huge brown eyes looking at me shocked, because that was not the first time it happened. So my friend, my best friend at the time, she called my mom and she told me the story. So I heard my parents talking on one of the evenings in the kitchen. They locked the door, but I heard them that maybe I would need some psychiatric help. And the minute I heard that, I thought, that's it. I'm not talking about it anymore. I got scared. And you can imagine that was late 80s. And obviously, you know, I didn't want to end up in a psychiatry clinic because at that time, it's just scary. But like I said, I always had my intuition was very, very strong, always. and I have made a very special connection with my grandpa. My mother's dead, that I still consider him to be my guardian. He passed away when I was 6, and they didn't let me go to the funeral because they thought it's going to traumatize me. But I was looking out of the window and I saw the cars coming and, you know, the coffin and in his face. And then I realized he's not, I could feel his soul. Only now as an adult, I realized that I was able to pick up on the soul and things like that. But back in the day, when I was 6, 7, 5, I did not realize what was happening around me at all. But I always knew that there's something that I'm here for. And there's a purpose for me to be able to see things like that. And luckily I have found courage and my wings to fly. And I have come back to my authentic self in my late 30s. I was very successful at my corporate job. I've led huge tenders in sales on a national level in Canada, and also working with companies like FBI out of the United States, selling them software. So I have grown significantly in the sales field, but for the past 3 years in my corporate world, I felt miserable. Even though I was very successful, very good commission checks, amazing benefits, I felt miserable. I felt that I'm not doing what I'm here for. And to the point, I could not sit and write an email. My body was aching. I have developed anxiety and insomnia at that time. And then I've asked my inner self and my higher self, please tell me, why am I experiencing this? And I have received a very vivid dream that I'm not fulfilling my purpose of why am I here in this lifetime. And then that weekend, my friends and I, my husband, my family, we went to a cottage for a weekend to have fun. And then all of a sudden I started crying and explaining to everybody that, oh my God, I'm going to leave my job because I want to do this. I want to help people with my spiritual abilities. And they go like, are you crazy, Layla? Seriously, you're going to leave your job? And I was crying hysterically, explain why you're not understanding what I'm saying. I'm not here to do sales. I'm not here to do marketing. I'm here to help people. I've been given. So anyways, long story short, it took me a couple of years to find that bravery. And finally, I've left the corporate world and I started seeing clients on a full-time basis my first week off. I was planning to take a couple of months off and see how I'm going to do this. But guess what? I had no break. And right away, I had people messaging me and coming to me to see me. Today, I call myself souls, and I'm able to telepathically communicate with them. And that's what I do with some of my clients. I'm also an energy healer. I do Reiki. I'm a Reiki master and teacher. I have my classes and I love it. I also love shamanism and I practice shamanic arts. I love everything about shamanism and journeying. And it's just something that I've realized through my past life regression. I've been a couple of lives in a shamanic village as a shaman. So that was very also excited to realize about myself. Obviously, this is not my first lifetime being spiritual, as I remember a lot of things from my past lives, such as certain skills, body movement, how to cut cords, things like that just came to me. The minute I came back to my authentic self and realized, Layla, just do this, that we want to be. The minute I said to myself, I am coming back to my authentic self, the knowledge came to me. Not all at the same time, but it's coming. It's coming in different things that I'm implementing now in my work. I genuinely love people. I find all people beautiful. And my purpose is to serve as a bridge between the physical and the spiritual realms. I also have a story about Holocaust. My husband and I, we went to Prague, Czech Republic, maybe 6-7 years ago. And as tourists, we were exploring the city of Prague, and there is this famous Jewish cemetery in the middle of Prague. It's called a Jewish neighborhood, and there was a concentration camp that was closed up, so people couldn't leave, and they were living there, and they were buried there. They were killed, and so it's like a cemetery. Maybe some of you have been there, have heard of that place. And my husband goes, let's go check it out. Let's go inside. Let's go see it. And I could not move. I had experienced so much fear, and I couldn't explain it. I said, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. Shortness of breath, my heart pounding, I have hot flashes. And he goes, what's wrong with you? I said, I don't feel like I want to go there. There's something that's stopping me from going there. And years later, when I've done my past life regression, I have seen myself as a 6-year-old girl being in being right there in Prague in that place, and I have died of hunger. And so I am just fascinated with the power of past life regression. Fascinated. And there's so many puzzle pieces we are getting and understanding about ourselves, our fears, our personalities. One of the things I treasure in this life is friends. I love having friends, and I treasure them. They're important to me. And I've realized why. I had a life as a Greek soldier, and I saw myself in this apartment, or the old-fashioned cave where we were sitting there with my friends, all soldiers, all Greek boys. And at that time I felt, oh my God, I love my friends. None of us had families because we were destined to be at war. And I know now why in this lifetime I treasure friends, because back then my friends were my family. There's so many things that I can share, but I'm going to pick and choose. Funny enough that Carole mentioned that when we first were talking over Zoom one-on-one, it was so easy to connect. In fact, I don't know if Carole, maybe Carole would share that as well. We have found that we have known each other before. And I called Carole Carolyn a couple of times, naturally. And then we meditated on it together live. We closed our eyes, and we have validated that there was probably perhaps a sisterhood relationship. Things like that are real. We meet people for a certain reason. No people come to our life with no reason or a mission. Also, I wanted to share with you that I am able on some points and some level communicate with animals. I'll tell you another spooky story just for Halloween. I was a teenager, no, maybe 14. Yeah, so teenager, 14, maybe 15. And me and my friends, we went cross-country skiing in suburbs in the forest by ourselves. We were so, proud of it and we're going to do it. We rented the skis and we went. And we went so far into the forest that we came across a wild dogs pack. And they have surrounded us. Almost. They were looking very hungry. It's like wolves, but they were dogs, very wild. They had a pack. So my friends all panicked. My cousin, I remember her. She took off her skis and she ran. And I'm telling everybody, don't run. They're going to run after you like it's dangerous. They're going to sense your fear. Don't run. They didn't listen to me, and they all left me there alone. And I was standing there in the middle of the wild dogs. And at that time, I realized I have to look them in the eye. So right away, I understood who is the main dog, the leader in the pack. So I kind of looked at his eyes like this, and I was asking, don't hurt me. I'm your friend. We are the same blood kind of thing. Whatever came to my mind at that time, I was terrified. But I said, I have no choice. I have to talk to them. So after a couple of minutes of telepathy, they weren't moving. he was receiving my information, eye-to-eye contact, and guess what? He walked me back to that retreat place where my parents and I were all staying from where we went skiing. He walked me back, and I was walking with the dog by myself, carrying my skis and my cousin's skis because she just left and ran away. So I have lots of stories like that, which are fascinating. And I was making notes last night what I'm going to be talking more examples. And oh my goodness, I have written 3 pages. So I cannot share all 3 pages with you. But these are the ones that I wanted to share with you and to highlight that we are all born here with a certain purpose. And I'm so happy, and I'm certain that all of you in that room have a special gift. So pursue it, be brave. Be brave and just acknowledge it. And who cares what people think? It's your life, it's your destiny, it's your soul contract. So at this moment, Carole, I'm going to give you the microphone. Thank you. If any questions, go ahead. I'm open to any questions. Carole, you're muted.
I don't think you mentioned that you trained with Georgina Cannon.
Yes, Georgina Cannon is my teacher, and she was my mentor in regression therapy and past life regression and life between lives regression therapy.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we'll come back to you in just a minute. So I was a little bit older when I finally accepted my gifts. I had seen ghosts all my life. I learned at 8 years old, don't tell people that you see ghosts. Most of you are not old enough to know the series at that time, like we have Ghosts, the series Ghosts now. At that time, there was a series called Topper. Oh, yeah. And for those of you who do remember, it was a really cute series. And when that series came on, you know, Topper couldn't tell anybody else that he saw these ghosts in his house. And that was my first clue. And I couldn't talk to my mother and my father anyway about these things, but they persisted after me. And we actually ran away from my father when I was 9 years old, lived with my grandmother for 2.5 years. And it was actually in divine order, because one night, my grandmother and I were sitting around her. She had a wood burning stove, and we had been out in the woods gathering sassafras. So she made sassafras tea. I didn't know at the time that sassafras can actually help you travel to the other side. I only learned that not too long ago. But we were sitting around having sassafras tea. I finally, for some reason, got up the courage to say to her, "Who are those people who walk through the house at night?" And my granny, you know, imagine this is in the Panhandle. She's a Southern cracker, if you know what that means, and you know, not very literate. And she says, "Oh, don't pay them no never mind. They forgets which room I'm in. They come to give me messages. They're family members." And then, because she was a very God-fearing, you know, hard-shell Southern Baptist, she said, "If and they scare you, tell them God go between me and thee." And so that's what I did. You know, I every time I'd feel them around and I wasn't comfortable with that, I'd say that mantra. That became my mantra. And they weren't, though, just at Granny's house. When we finally moved to the house my mother was building, they were there too. Sometimes they poked me at night to wake me up, I guess probably that 3-5 year hour period, and icy cold fingers. And I was sleeping with my sister. I'd hit my sister and say, quit that. And she said, "Quit what?" You know, I'd be waking her up. So I lived like that for a long time until my father died. And I was at his funeral, of course, and he was too. standing over there to the right-hand side. And I knew it was him because my father couldn't match patterns. He always had a different coat, a different vest, a different shirt, different tie pattern, you know, all mixed match. And that, there he was, and all his mixed match. But then when I saw his hand and I saw his ring, he had a red Masonic ring. And so, gives me goosebumps. And so I said, okay, I think it's time for me to get over this fear of ghost. And that's when I was talking about meditation earlier. I did a year long of meditation. I did a year long of taking metaphysical classes to learn to speak with spirits, psychic development classes. And so 2 years after he died, I'm in a meditation class, and there the veil between his world and mine separated, and there he was. I could finally not just see him, but I could hear him, and I could see that he was in the 10th hell of the Buddha. So my father was Chinese and Buddhist, and that's where I saw him. So that, I won't go into all of that detail, but that's where it began for me. I finally realized that there's a purpose for me to see ghosts. And I was actually able to help him get out of the 10th hell. Then I got to thinking, wait a minute, my dad's Buddhist. He did some not so good things in his lifetime. What is that going to do for creating his next lifetime? And then I thought, oh, wait a minute. What about me? You know, I've tried to live a good life, but there's some things I've done that I'm not proud of. And so I said, what about me? What's going to happen to me? And then I was meditating, and it came to me, wait a minute, who were those ghosts that scared me all through my life? So this is going to address the question that a couple of you had. As soon as I said that, I put that intention out there, and I have this huge cocktail table where I meditate, and it's like all of a sudden I was surrounded, and it looked like the scene from the new series Ghost. They were in different costumes. There was an Oriental woman, there was an Indian woman, there was several men from different time periods. And I said, wait a minute, they're from different time periods. And then wait a minute, I think I was them. They were my past lives. And so that's when, as I was developing my skills, I was finally given like the final exam, and the final exam was, now you have to choose what you're going to do. I had been dabbling in different things. And so I was told I have to choose what I'm going to use. And because of my fascination with these past lives, I knew that was going to be one. The mediumship, now I was accepting it. It was coming easily, and I could see that it was somehow connected with this past life stuff. So I said, okay, that's another one. And then I mentioned earlier that I do psychometry, which is something that comes super easy for me. So I had learned in my psi training that pay attention to what comes easy for you, easy, effortless, and what energizes you. And so that's the way I am with psychometry. So that's what happened with me. And then, of course, as I've told some of you, that I trained with Brian Weiss. The universe guided me to Brian Weiss. That was sort of magical. I trained with Carole Bowman, and then also with HCH Institute, and for the regression therapy. One of the things I love about what we do as mediums who are also regression therapists, when a past life from a subject appears, that it's not just data, it's not just information, just like what Patricia was talking about earlier. We can see the information, but we know the process. We know how to look at the energy and do a little quick work. You know, sometimes it's going to need more, but sometimes we can do some quick work to be able to just have a cathartic release in that moment. That's a really beautiful thing. And then on the other hand, as regression therapist, I sort of kid that I feel like Peter Pan flying with Wendy, you know, to Neverland. And so I begin seeing where my client's going. I don't tell them what I'm seeing because part of our job is to not lead. But what I do is I take notes on the left-hand side of my paper about what I'm seeing. And it's very common that what I see, that's the next thing they describe. And then at the end, you know, we'll compare notes, and it just makes for an amazing, beautiful experience. So now let's bring Layla back, and we'll tell you why we started doing what we're doing. I thought, oh, you know, this is our second, it was an accident, sort of, right? Last year that we ended up doing Halloween weekend. Well, this year I decided let's really get into it. And I got to thinking, you know, what could, and especially, you know, meeting Layla early in the year. And I thought, what can we do to really jazz it up, right? And in June the 9th this year, a person who was going to be a speaker next year passed. Some of you may know him, Walter Simcoe. And I got to meet him several years ago, and he had agreed to be a speaker. You know, he couldn't do it for this year, but he was going to do it for next year. So he says to me from the other side, what if you bring messages from regression therapists and researchers who have passed? So I'm holding this up. I have a stack of cards, and I showed these to Layla, and she says, oh, wait a minute, I'm getting a hit from somebody. I'm getting a hit from somebody. And so the first thing that she said was, Dolores Cannon is here. And I said, oh my God, I forgot to make a card for Dolores Cannon. She's letting us know. So you want to share the message that Dolores gave you?
Yes. So I could perhaps try to channel her again, but at that time when you and I spoke, Carole, she has mentioned a couple of things that it's not exactly the way she's seen it. And that she does not want any judgment. She's very open to communication. Carole, you took some notes. Do you have my notes there for Dolores? Well, or do you want me to channel her again?
I know it takes a moment for you to feel her energy. So while you're doing that, I will share a couple of the other. So the poll that I had in the handouts, that was Helen Wambach telling me we need more stats. She was a statistician who became a regression therapist and researcher, and she was really interested in learning what kind of things happen. In her book about, and so she, did I think a study with 1,000 people, and she collected the statistics from all of those journeys to show these various things that happen, very common things that happen. And because Layla is in Canada, I thought possibly she knew Joel Witten, who was a regression therapist. His book, Life Between Lives, I have it right here, that he wrote with Joe Fisher, not much to see, but that is probably one of my favorite books about regression therapy. And it was co-written with Joe Fisher. So when I first opened up to reincarnation, I read Joe Fisher's book, The Case for Reincarnation, which has a foreword by the Dalai Lama. Fantastic collection of information in that. So I was saying to Layla, you know, it's really bums me out that Joe Fisher, as much as he had done research in this area, that he committed suicide. And I was really hoping to hear from Joel Witten because he died in the middle of writing this book about the Bardo. So now that he's in the Buddhists call the Bardo the place in between lives. So I was hoping that he would show up and give us some messages. And it looks like you've plugged into Dolores now, so let's come back to that.
Before I talk about Dolores, she's very easy to connect with. I did try to connect with Joe Fisher, and his soul is, the way I see it and sense, is a bit still lost, looking for Philippa, the ghost that he fell in love with. And connecting with Joel Witten, I've asked Joel if he has seen Joe Fisher, and they are completely in two different realms. The way I sense it, and it's my personal interpretation of the messages I'm receiving, they haven't met again on a soul level. But now I'm going to close my eyes. So Carole, if you want, we can do it the same way we did it together, one-on-one. You can ask me questions, and I'm going to try to, so just to explain to everybody, I'm not putting Dolores' soul into my body. I am telepathically speaking with her soul. So my voice won't change. I'm not doing one of those things.
So does anyone here in the room have a question for Dolores Cannon? Many of you know who she was. Maybe those of you who do not. She created quantum healing hypnosis therapy and wrote many books and has done training. Some people in our group have done trainings with her, Dolores Cannon. And was there a question here?
Peggy online.
Oh, Peggy. Yeah, you want to open your mic and ask a question?
Sure. I don't know if she wants to answer this question, but in terms of the other regressionists' point that we need more stats, I'm wondering what Dolores would say we need. I'm specifically asking that because I have a PhD dissertation coming up and I don't know what I'm going to do it on. So it's like, what do we need? Tell me what we need and I'll see what I can do.
Cool.
She's saying that she has given enough stats, and there's many videos where she's talking about her research. She's asking Peggy if she had read her books.
I have not. So I should do that.
We could take the information that's already in Dolores's books and create a bunch of statistics just from that even.
And she is referring into one of the YouTube videos that she has done. I'm just seeing this picture. She's sitting on a stage in a chair, and that's what she's showing me. So that's probably how the YouTube video looks like, maybe. So she's sitting in a chair, like a green chair, white top, a blazer, and in front of her she sees audience split in half. So there's something in that YouTube video, Peggy, that you can she's saying to me that you can grab some stats out of that video.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
And Peggy, to address your question, Helen actually gave me a direct message for you. So the 3 days before the eclipse, I was woken up at 3 to 5 in the morning every morning. And one of the mornings it was Helen. I wrote mine down so that I would be able to remember everything in detail. And she had guided me a few months ago to a paper. Helen Wambach had guided me to a few months ago to a paper, because as I mentioned earlier, if I were younger, I would be doing research in academia about this field and bringing it more into mainstream. And yet I know that in my heart of hearts, that's not what I'm meant to do right now. But I was guided to, and Helen reminded me that she was the one who guided me to this paper by Eric J. Christopher, who wrote a master thesis on the effectiveness of past life regression therapy. And then just a few weeks ago, I met Peggy, who is looking to do also a master's research work on, yeah, and this is what she hasn't quite defined yet. And so Helen Wambach said to me to give you the message, Peggy, to yes, go for it. And yep. And then she said, and she loves the survey that we had for the poll. So
Great.
so
Awesome.
yeah, for some people statistics are important and other people they're not. Dolores was in her whole own little world, and you know, and nobody's wrong. Just like Ian Stevenson, you know, his type of research, even though he was a psychiatrist, he did not focus on the therapeutic value of remembering, where Carole Bowman, you know, did. So we all have a part to play in this whole scheme of things.
Good luck, Peggy.
Thank you very much.
And then from Joel Witten, I really wish he would channel his book through me so that the book about the Bardo through me. But what he said to me was the Bardo is more expansive than he even imagined. And he loves it, that he's free to explore, to contemplate, and to astral travel. He says it's an absolutely fascinating place.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I love about that is he's showing us a different side of the Bardo, where most human beings are afraid of death. For me, what I call the non-physical world, some people call the Bardo, is just another aspect of this earth journey. So that's why I want to know more about it. I feel like, you know, we know the tip of the iceberg about the physical world, but we know even less about the non-physical world. And when I connected with Joe Fisher, here's what he had to say. Research alone is not enough. It did not help him find peace or courage. He thought he knew how it worked. At his death scene, he realized that he did not apply the therapeutic value to his own self-care. Imagine. His realization came too late, just moments before he died. So, like Layla said, he is in a very different place than where Joel is. And he's, what I could see with Joe Fisher is that he's working on now what lifetime can I choose to balance, having taken his own life. So when one commits suicide, that takes on a whole different energy. And then when we were getting ready for the, last night we did the ghost tour, and that was so much fun, by the way. The decorated houses in the fan are just so awesome. You've got to see them in person. Online does not do it justice. We had a blast down there, and then walking down Carytown and seeing the people all dressed up. They'll probably do it tonight and tomorrow night too. And but I had to address a fear that I've had ever since I moved to Richmond, that every time I go to the fan, and especially as I go through Richmond proper and then down into Shaka Bottom, I would get the willies. Almost to the level of a panic attack. And I thought, oh goodness, what is going on with that? And I mentioned before that my ancestor was from this area. My ancestor Jemima, who was a Native American from this area. And so I was doing a little bit of research about that, but in the reason why I have all these cards, index cards, is I'm doing research about all the people before us who have written about reincarnation, who have done past therapy. It goes way back further than I ever imagined, but one actually centered on Richmond, on Virginia. And this was a guy named William Strachey. And he was here in 1610, I think it was. He was a secretary to the colony of Virginia, and he was charged with making notes about what life was like. So imagine in the 1600s. And he had two Native Americans that he who could speak English. So they were telling him what the Native American lives were like and what their beliefs were like. And lo and behold, he discovered that they believed in reincarnation. Did you know that Native Americans here in this area believed in reincarnation? That was a surprise to me, but it gets even better. His posting before he came to Virginia had been Greece. And so he had been exposed to the classic ancients. And so he was delving into Pythagoras, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato. Well, they believed in reincarnation as well. And what surprised the heck out of Strachey was that the Native American beliefs were very similar to the classic ancient Greek philosophers. And so what he said to me was, why did we call them savages? How could we call them savages if their beliefs were so like these other beings who we considered to be so enlightened? And then the other thing he said to me was, don't assume that one is automatically enlightened in the non-physical world. And Patricia kind of alluded to that the Bardo bubble, there in many teachings, there's all these different levels of what happens in the Bardo. And I'm doing research about that. And then, do you have more, Layla? Did anyone else have a question for Layla, for Dolores? Yeah.
So it's strange that I fell down on Dolores Cannon Lake rabbit hole Friday, and I had never even heard her stuff, but I was just like so drawn to it and just was listening like from morning all the way to late at night, everything. So what I want to know is, what does she mean when she said it's not exactly the way she's seen it? What she allowed, like, what does that mean?
Carole, if you don't mind, could you please kindly repeat the question? It was hard for me to hear.
Yeah, so when you said it's not exactly the way that she saw it, what exactly were you talking about, or was she talking about? Can you elaborate?
I'm gonna say the way I hear it. Well, there's not as many levels as I thought there are. And I just want to add something that I've sensed earlier when I connected with her last night, and I'm sensing it now again. She hasn't come across, and the way I'm sensing it, she hasn't come across any UFO evidence in the realms where she's at now.
Wow.
It was my passion. It was my she's done a lot of research about evidence of aliens and UFO. And I thought I've seen it with my eyes and I knew exactly how everything looked. But I'm not able to find it here the way I saw it from Earth. She's very concerned about respect and doubting her methods. I know that people are doubting, some of the therapists are doubting my methods. But I'm confident that I will find still what I was talking about. Are there any other questions?
Yes, we've got another question here from Monica.
I just wanted to elaborate to Dolores, is she meaning levels of consciousness when she means levels?
It's a good question.
Can you please repeat that, Carole, for me?
So Monica was asking, when she's talking about levels, is she talking about levels of consciousness? Levels of consciousness in the non-physical world?
Right, but she was saying that she's realizing there's not as many levels as she originally thought.
I'm getting a validation, yes.
So not 5, but maybe.
And also, I'm getting a yes for her teachings as well. Too many levels, she says, for her teaching as well. It could have been much more simpler.
So did you understand that one? So there are several levels in Dolores Cannon. I think 4 levels, if I remember.
4.
Yeah. And so what I'm understanding that through Layla, Dolores is saying she could have simplified it.
Oh.
Yes. Yes, I'm getting a big yes for this. Yes.
Okay. Got another question from Mary. On the what people?
The backdrop people. You have this theory about backdrop people that everyone you see has a soul, and some people are just backdrop.
Oh yes. What about the backdrop people, Dolores?
I'm being asked to elaborate.
So the people.
This idea that we live in a simulation. So like she gave a talk once saying that like when you leave your house doesn't exist, your car doesn't exist, everything goes away. And you're just in that moment. So you have your soul family that you reincarnate with, but not everyone in your daily life. The people at the grocery store are just backdrop people. They don't have soul. They just give them.
Wow. Sounds like virtual reality, doesn't it?
Hologram.
Carole, was that a question for me?
So she was just talking about the backdrop people that Dolores talks about who are kind of in the background of our lives as we're moving along, that maybe don't have souls, maybe they're just constructs. That's the word that came to my mind.
Yes, they exist.
They exist.
That's her answer that I'm sensing.
Okay, and then John has a question.
Yeah, I think I do. I think in incarnation, our primary motivation is to avoid pain and seek pleasure. I think for survival, but then to seek pleasure. What's the primary motivation of souls in the Bardo? What drives people in the Bardo? Souls.
So what is the motivation of souls in the Bardo compared to what it's like in the physical world?
It's very light here. Quiet movement. Feels so good to be here. But I would like to move forward. And it looks purple.
Looks what? Purple?
Purple. She's on a mission, Carole. She wants to move forward out of there. The way I sense it from her, the Bordeaux is just a temporarily step in between steps, like a platform of resting. Resting and purifying. I'm just starting to see images of this place that she's describing to me.
When you said you saw purple, what is purple?
It's where the soul goes after death. And it hibernates there. Cleanses and purifies before moving forward. It looks like light purple. Very, very quiet movement and feels like home. She's somehow talking about things that I would not call it plateau. And I'll leave it as that, she says. I had a question online from Sharon or Shannon. Sorry, I'm not opening my eyes because if I open my eyes, I have to go back into reconnecting. Shannon, if you're there, can you please unmute and ask your question?
Yes. So my question, where we go, was kind of along the lines of what everyone else is saying. Like, are there any specific messages about the things that she taught about that she perceives differently now that she's there?
I'm getting a validation that she would simplify her levels in teaching. And she would simplify the levels of where she's taking her students to.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a question from Olga.
Can you please elaborate more on there's no evidence of aliens? Is it like maybe they're in different plane? Like this question just bothers me.
Yeah.
Is it like they don't exist at all, or there's like huh? Maybe she can't recognize them. Yeah, and what about like star seeds and
So the-
and everything else?
Yeah, the question is, can you elaborate more on why she's not seeing, sensing, or knowing aliens in the Bardo? Dolores spoke and wrote a lot about aliens, so I think this is a great question. I have a feeling I know the answer, but I want to wait till see what she says.
She is sensing that she has been forbidden to see it, as she is on the other realm. She's not. She hasn't been given
She's not allowed.
something like that across those lines. Is that she's trying, but she just can't see it. Maybe yet, she says. Carole, may I ask for your help with this question? Can you ask me yes or no questions, please?
Okay. Okay. Is it a question that is a yes or no? Okay, that might help.
I have felt for a long time that the afterlife for human souls might be in a different place than the afterlife for, say, Andromeda's or Pleiades or what have you. That there's so many different realms, if you want to call it that, their lessons may be different from our lessons. And that's why there's difference. And so my question is, does she agree from where she sits now that's a possibility, yes or no?
Could you hear the question? So the Pat is saying that she senses that extraterrestrials have their own Bardo, their own non-physical world, or maybe they don't even have that, who knows, you know, but it's different from what we experience as human beings. So that would be the question, is what extraterrestrials experience after a physical existence in a different place than what human beings experience? Okay. Sum it up.
I'm getting a yes.
And when I said, I think I know what the answer to that is, that's exactly what I was feeling.
I'm getting a big yes on this.
Yeah. You know, we try to box things into a pigeonhole things into nice, neat little packages. And the universe is so much more expansive, I find, than that. Anybody else have a question for Dolores?
I'll take one more. She's asking me to
Yeah.
This is it.
go.
Are you planning to come back and incarnate again on Earth?
So the question is, are you planning to come back on Earth?
I'm going to say it as I hear it. I'm going to skip 2 rounds and then I'll come back.
Would you say that again, please?
I will skip 2 rounds. I don't know what she means by 2 rounds.
Give 2 rounds.
And then I want to come back.
Good.
I have so much to do here. I'm not in a rush. She's smiling.
She's got us laughing too. Beautiful. So take your time and come back and join us in
I'm
ordinary.
going to ask the audience and everybody online to mentally thank her for being here. It's very, very
Yes.
important.
Yes. Thank you, Dolores, from all of us here. We appreciate you joining us and sharing what you're learning on the other side and all of these beings.
She's smiling. Yeah, thank you.
Good. I mentioned that I'm doing research about people who have been teaching about reincarnation, and I was really surprised when Raymond Moody a couple of years ago was talking about how Pythagoras taught about reincarnation. And then I realized that was my connection with Pythagoras. I've been studying Pythagorean, hey Tom, Pythagorean numerology, but because of my dyslexia, I struggle with numerology, but I still was just like so connected with Pythagoras. And when Raymond Moody said that about him teaching how to remember past lives, I was weeping. And so I knew that there was something going on about that. So I was really hoping to be able to connect with him. I did twice. And so the first time he spoke to me, he said, he loves the technology. He loves the technology of our current world, but he does see how it is also a distraction for some. And just like back then, there were distractions back then. And he says, you know, the evolution of human beings is a slow process, and yet he marvels at the beauty of the world. If you know anything about Pythagoras's work with not only with numerology, but math, if you've ever done any geometry, you know, he's like the grandfather of geometry. And a lot of people don't realize that he did a lot with sacred geometry and the music of the spheres. He was the first one to see how music has an energy. So every tone of music has an energy. And so he says, look, love, beauty, and order are signs of harmony with divine intelligence. And then the other night, I was at a meeting and they were talking about augmented reality. And this is something that Carole Bowman's son was also talking about. And he says, holograms, computers, augmented reality. Where do you think all that stuff comes from? He says, we think of it here. And then it's manifested in the physical world. So you know that saying, as above, so below? He says, yeah, it's very true. All of these things are happening. And then he gave me a pragmatic statement about that as well. He said, so-called problems are clues to the answers that are already in existence. But the answers are in the place in between. So this is another reason why this concept of being able to shift our awareness into altered states of consciousness is so important. So he said, therefore, be still and know. Be still and know. Remember your connection to the harmony of the spheres. That is where you will find truth. So I was really thrilled to be able to get that message. But Dolores Cannon had to have the last word. the night before the equinox, she finally came to me. I had not been able to connect with her. Layla's had a much greater connection. And it was so wonderful what she said to me, because it's something similar to things that I say, but I'll read it to you the way she said it. Imagination is God's playground. Imagination is the bridge to divine intelligence. The world has painted itself into a corner because it has forgotten the source of imagination. But when you embrace imagination, you will overcome all the challenges. So you know how many times we hear when someone's doing a regression, and Carole, Bowman mentioned this too. Hey, it's okay to imagine all of these things. And yet, how many times do we poo-poo our imagination? And what I'm learning is that it's the language of God. And so we're learning a new language when we learn to listen to our imagination. So, any last questions for Layla or any of these other characters who have shown up? Yes, Joe.
It's not that's a question for someone who's shown up. Does anyone know, because I honestly don't know, if Edgar Casey has reincarnated? Or that's the first part, and then second part, if he hasn't, did you ask him a question?
I asked that of Hewlin Casey when I met him many years ago. Has there been a reincarnate of Edgar Casey? And Joanne referred to the book that she wrote 2 years ago, or no, last year, I guess it was, about TJ, who supposedly was a reincarnate of Thomas Jefferson. Oh yeah. And very connected with Edgar Casey. And so I couldn't get him to talk to me at all. Edgar Casey. There were certain ones of this stack of cards, just, it's like dialing up, no answer. They think I'm spam or something. I don't know.
Yeah, or sometimes, Carole, you're trying to channel one person and then all of a sudden another soul shows up.
Exactly.
Like Michael Jackson loves to show up with different mediums. He loves the attention. You're trying to channel one and then Michael Jackson shows up.
Whoa, what? Edgar Casey will reincarnate in 2200.
I had not heard that. So Mary Grace was saying Edgar Casey is predicted to reincarnate in 2200.
Well, there's some people that believe he has David Wilcox. Anyone know David Wilcox?
Oh yeah.
The ARE does not agree with.
Well,
Yeah, but maybe now that we put the questions out more, that we'll get more information, and we'll keep you posted on the Reincarnation Symposium Facebook page. So hope you'll join us there. We're now yes.
Carole, may I ask a question for the audience?
Yes, please.
I am very curious, how many of you have experienced lucid dreaming or astral travel?
Show of hands. Show of hands. Oh,
Carole, help me. What's the percentage wise?
I'd say about 80%.
80%?
Did you say lucid dreaming?
Lucid dreaming, astral projection. Yeah.
And now the following questions for those people who raise their hands up. Have you ever felt that it's so difficult to come back and click to your body back? Have you ever experienced a struggle of coming back and zip locking your soul to your body? Raise your hands. I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah. Okay, hold your hands up. We're gonna show it to Layla. Yeah,
Excellent. Oh, love it. Love it.
yeah,
Love
this
it.
is an advanced group.
I love it. Yeah. And I find that when I was younger, I was scared. Like, how come my mind is already there, but my body is not moving? And I'm trying to wake myself up, and my soul is just not there yet. And I'm Layla, come on, I can't move. Come back. And then this all of a sudden, this click happens, and then you're back to normal again.
Yes, and actually, when I wake up, that's the first thing I do is I check to make sure I'm all the way back.
Yeah, isn't it fascinating? And one more thing I wanted to mention that I think Carole agrees with me. I think we've discussed that in our one-on-one. Do you find that you receive a lot of messages, or if you do receive messages at night, do they come to you between 3 and 5 a.m.?
Got a lot of nods, heads nodding on that one.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's two more questions. Kate wants to ask, can you explain the differences or similarities between hypnotic regression and remote viewing? Oh, that's huge differences. You want to handle that one?
Carole, I'll ask you to handle this one, please.
Okay.
It's going to take half an hour.
So you do not have to do a hypnotic regression to do remote viewing. You can do a meditation. You can do trance work, but different from hypnotic regression. So, and also you can do it on your own, where usually with regression therapy, it works better with a partner. Some people are able to do self-hypnosis, but so remote viewing, for those of you who may not realize what it is, it's actually, the way I've done it is to send my spirit body out of my physical body to a destination to take. Now, I might go into a light or deep meditative place to be able to do that, but with hypnosis, I'm right here. I like to think of hypnosis as picture in picture. You know those picture in picture TVs where you've got the large screen, but you've got all these other little screens. And so when past lives show up, they usually show up first in the little screens. And for me, the large screen will go black, fade to black. And then I'll know, like, the little screen will be beeping, and I'll know, okay, flip that to the large screen. And, but it's all happening simultaneously. It's like in the reincarnation class I did last month, and they got to have the experience. You're very present that you're here in this room, but you're also present that in this other state of consciousness, you're having an experience. And it's something that you cannot deny. It takes that whole picture in picture idea another level, because you're experiencing it, not just viewing it. So I hope that answers that question. And then Shannon would like to ask another question.
I just had a question. I think I've kind of asked something similar before, but you were mentioning like the time periods and stuff like that. And I think I had told you before that I had experiences as a little girl with like feeling things around me and not really like being afraid, like not being really aware if I was safe with them and stuff like that. Well, somebody was with me at 3 o'clock this morning too, 3:18 to be exact. They kept waking me up. It was interesting, just like by making noises in my room. So I guess my question is, again, how do you guys, when you first started out, like embracing your gift and stuff like that, like how did you get away from the fear of it and know that like you were safe?
Thank you, Shannon, for asking this question. Congratulations, you might be a medium.
Maybe.
All right. I told her this earlier, so now you've heard it from two different people, Shannon.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful validation. So the first thing is that I would advise you to do, as I was advised, try to go through your fear. Ask who is that and why they're there, and just listen. It's scary. And, you know, it comes as all of a sudden somebody touches you or somebody wakes you up. I was pulled by my legs to wake up a lot of times. And still today, I know what's happening. So, but I'm not afraid anymore because I know there's a message and I'm going to receive it. Shannon, there's certain things you can do with your hands to, if you sense that this entity is not one of the greatest ones, you can message me and I'll teach you what to do to shrink that entity if you're sensing is something off, you know, something scary. But most of the time is your angels, archangels, ancestors, friends, if you have disease, you know, those people that I want to say something to you. So for example, I'll give you an example. One night, and my husband is not spiritual. He's a new soul. He's into business and all that stuff. So, one night, well, he lives with me, so he's sensing stuff now. So one night, I saw he's not a direct uncle of mine, like step uncle, not blood related, but he's married anyways. We call him uncle. He passed away and he was hanging out in our bedroom for a couple of days. Even my husband felt him. He goes, there's a man in our bedroom and he's not, he does not have any abilities. So sometimes they come very visual, Shannon, and they start talking to you and pulling you by the legs or just waking you up around 3 or 5 a.m., between 3 and 5. It's because they have a message, Shannon, and there's nothing to be afraid of. So in that instance that my uncle said to give the message to his wife to forgive Maria. And it's a funny story. So he told me, tell Lucy that I said to forgive Maria. So I called Lucy the next day, and it's fascinating. It's so crazy. So I called her and I said, your husband, who passed, right? So your husband told me that you should forgive Maria. And her response was hilarious. Why is he saying that? She ruined my mood and la la. So she didn't even question how could he tell me these things. Like her reaction was anger, and why would he be on her side? La 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 la. She didn't even question how come I'm talking to him. So Shannon, just talk to yourself, and one night when you feel this 3 o'clock calling, go through your fear. Keep your eyes open and say, I'm not afraid. I'm here to listen. And the fear will go away.
Okay.
I'm sure Carole will have something to add to this.
Thank you.
So when I see fears come up, and of course I learned this the hard way, right? That it says to me that that's what needs to be addressed first. And it was beautiful. The very first sentence that I ever had from a past life was, what is there to fear of death, but rather fear not living? Took me a lot of years to understand the meaning of that. And I realized that before I accepted my gift, I was a walking zombie. I was not fully alive. I had so much fear around me. And like Patricia was talking about, I had my defense mechanisms, you know, protecting those fear things that from my childhood trauma. So if you're feeling fear, then that's the first thing to look at. What's the cause of this fear? Yeah. Mary's got a question. Hold on.
Have you ever gotten a message for someone you don't know? Because sometimes I hear things and I'm like, I have no idea who that's for or what to do.
I'll share a funny story about that. When I was in my classes, my metaphysical classes, we were doing a meditation, and all of a sudden this black man was like right there in front of me. Beautiful bone structure. I mean, I could draw this man. The image was so vivid. Well, in Naples, Florida, we didn't have a whole lot of Black people, but every time I'd be around any, I'd look, is that him? Is that him? And no hits. Then I was a sponsor for the youth group at Unity, the YOU group. We were at a retreat, and all of a sudden there was this Black woman who was from Tallahassee, who I had not met before, but that Black man was standing next to her. And I said, and I was very green at this point in time, but what happened was so validating that it really helped me trust my own skills. So I said, and I didn't know her. So I'm, very gingerly saying, have you lost anybody recently? Has anybody passed over? And she says, yes, my husband. And I said, okay. And so she's a little skeptical. And she said, I told her, that this person came to me in my meditation. And so she says, what did he look like? And so I'm describing him, he had real, how some Black people have these really round cheekbones and what have you, and he had short cropped hair and a big nose, big lips. Well, a lot of Black people have those features. She says, did he have a hat? I said, that's funny that you mentioned that, because the hat was on his chest. And she said, oh, that's the way we buried him. Oh. And I said, oh, okay. So that was the first validation. I said, I think he's got a message for you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come to me. And would you like me to give you the message? So she said, okay. And so I get quiet, and I'm as quiet as you can with 300 teenagers around. And so I started seeing the movie Ghost, and it was this one particular scene where Patrick Swayze got on the chair, or straddled the seat with Demi Moore, and she had her hands on the pottery wheel, and Patrick Swayze put his hands on the pottery wheel also. And so I'm describing this scene, not knowing what the heck, And she said, oh my God, I'm a potter. And my husband was a potter also. She said, we did two very different styles. She did raku, and he did more primitive style. And then now he's very agitated, and he says, and tell her to get back on her potter's wheel. She had not been on her potter's wheel since he had passed. And she says, and when she does, I'm going to put my arms around her, and we'll integrate our styles. Isn't that beautiful? So I said, oh, that's great. And then she says, is there anything else? Now she's really into this, and I said, I don't know, something about let the drums beat on, whatever. It didn't mean anything to me, but okay, whatever. Let the drums beat on. She says, oh my God. He was an African drummer. He had an African drummer group, and at his funeral, the African drummers came to the gravesite. They played their drums, and it rained, and so that was a good sign in their culture. So it was like, okay, that sealed the deal. Well, I saw her the next year at the next YOU retreat, and she couldn't wait to come up to me, and she said, we did it. We created this new pottery form. And she said, and I entered it in an international contest in Taiwan. And she said, and we won. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yes, got another question over here. Jenny.
Hello, Jenny. I guess it's kind of a question, or maybe just like helping figuring out exactly what this experience was. I get, woken up in the middle of the night, the 3 to 5 time period also. with ghosts and energies and, all sorts of other entities. And I've experienced this for many, many years. So I'm pretty comfortable with distinguishing who they are and what they are. But a couple weeks ago, I had an experience where I woke up it was about 4 a.m. with somebody pushing on I was laying on my side, and it was a push on my ribs, and it wasn't just like a tap, it was a compression, like a leaning into. And I faced the doorway, and I opened my eyes, and I see my 12-year-old son leaving the room and walking down the hallway. And so I figured he had woken up in the middle of the night, for some reason, tried to wake me up, couldn't wake me up. So he went back into his room. And so the next day I said, when he woke up, I said, "Were you okay? Did you need something? Like, did you have was your stomach upset?" And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And I was like, "You woke me up in the middle of the night." And he said, "No." And he is dead serious. Like, doesn't mess around. He's very serious. He would not like joke about it. And if he had, he would very much admit that he had come in my room, And I kept going, like, "Are you sure you just like were tired and you don't remember doing this?" I mean, we talked about this for several days because I was trying to figure out what this experience was. And he really was very adamant that he did not wake up. And so I was like, okay, this was an other than experience. And so I contacted, I did my meditation and I channeled my guides to try and get clarity on it, and didn't really get any clear information. The only information that I was really given was an image of a twin. And so I was like, okay, people have twins and one dies in womb. Is this the energy of maybe possibly his twin? And I never really got any kind of clear information on what that could have been. I was just curious if anyone else has experienced anything like that, or.
That's an unusual one. Any hits on that, Layla?
Yes, what I'm sensing is 2 things. One thing could be that he's sleepwalking and he doesn't know about it. Well, that's very logical explanation. But now let's talk about the spiritual explanation to this. Sometimes certain things are being masked from our consciousness. If you weren't meant to see something, they would change the picture for you with somebody you know. Carole, are you getting a validation for this option, for this, what I just said?
Yes, I sense that's a good possibility. And I also get the sense that he could astral project his body.
I'm getting a validation for that.
But while you were talking about it, I kept feeling like in another life, there's something about another life with him, with you, and a twin.
I've had many lifetimes with him.
Yeah.
I'm very connected with him and his past lives. And my ancestral lineage, we have many, many twins genetically. So that does make sense. Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot the name of the beautiful lady who was speaking. Did you have any marks on your body next day?
No, I didn't.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay.
We have another question online. Does anyone else have bleed through past life regression in your daily life where you drop into past lives? I mean, who doesn't?
Yes, a lot.
Yeah, but to recognize it. And the way that I try to explain it to people who are new to this is that for me, it looks like an energetic double exposed picture. So you know what a double exposed picture where there's 2 images that have, somehow been merged and it looks like it's one picture. So energetically, I separate the pictures and then I talk to them individually and say, okay, what's the message here? A great question. Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm surprised we didn't bring up the wording bleed over today, but that's really one of your first clues about that you're remembering. Another question from.
So I've read in some of the books where some people wake up at the same time, like at 3 a.m. because they killed them in their soul and their body's remembering the death. But why? What are other reasons why people? I mean, are they getting downloads? Like why people are waking up between specifically 3 and 5? Like
Yeah.
5 times.
Yeah, your biologically, your circadian rhythms are primed at that point in time. And so the more conscious you are, the more you can be aware of that, oh, this is a great time for me to, do this. It's not something you want to force, but it, when it happens, just bring your awareness, be mindful to what's going on in your system, and things will happen.
Carole, was a question about age, or I didn't hear the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. So she was saying that, what are the reasons why people wake up between 3 and 5?
Oh.
And she also mentioned that someone who has died at that time period, they might be woken up at that time period, which thank you for bringing that up, because I forget which speaker was talking about it, but I thought, oh, I hope she'll mention about seasonal memories. Seasonal memories are when you get this visceral or knowing or emotional feeling at the same time you died in another lifetime. For me, before I was beginning to remember, I would have this choking feeling around my neck, and I did the medical thing. I went to the doctor. They thought it was allergies, but so I took the allergies medication, and it wasn't helping. It was only when I remembered that Holocaust lifetime where she was strangled that energy went away. So seasonal memories, that's good. So whether it's between that time period, but also circadian rhythms. I mean, biologically, they know that. So one more question and we'll, John.
Layla, you mentioned that your husband, you think, is a new soul. Can you guys talk about that a little? New souls versus old souls? I got a feeling I'm a very new soul. I hear these gifts you people have, and it's just like,
Yeah.
Amen.
Thank you for your question. So the way I see an old soul versus a new soul is a number of reincarnations that I am able to sense in people. And within the new soul, no matter how hard you try to explain what divine wisdom is or what universe is and other beautiful things, they just don't get it. They look at you, they appreciate you for saying that, and then they're out. Versus old soul, they, even if they're not open to it yet, they have a lot of wisdom in them. When they open up to spirituality, they go very fast to it and they align to their authentic self. They've been here many, many lives and many, many reincarnations. Usually older soul is one of your good friends that can listen to you. Empathy comes with an old soul. Carole, do you have anything to add to what I'm saying?
So I actually do not use the term old or new soul. And the reason why I do not use those terms is something I learned from my Chinese genealogy. In traveling from China to other places, they don't call themselves immigrants. They call themselves sojourners
Mhm.
because their intention is always to go back home. Look at that metaphor. I feel like we are sojourners having incarnations on earth. And the other reason why I don't use the term old soul and new soul is because for me, soul represents the aspect of the creator, and which is eternal.
Mhm.
So how can I call it old soul, new soul? And I'm still working out my thoughts about all of these things, but those two things, you know, that the eternal, although there's teachings, and I don't know if Mary Grace has heard about this, but in Theosophy, they're talking about how that word eternal, we need a new definition, that there's something beyond what we call eternal.
I agree
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah. So, and this is where my cosmology of reincarnation has taken me, that this whole reincarnation system is just another construct, but it's such a beautifully organized system. That's why I want to be able to give words to it to help us understand why we chose this particular construct to, you know, to manifest in. So great question.
Great
Really.
question. Thank you so much. And just to clarify, I'm going to go, Carol, going forward, I'm going to stop saying new versus old. Just to clarify, in my view, when I say an old versus a new, is the number of reincarnations.
Incarnation.
So that's what I'm referring to. But again, I agree that the soul journey is eternal. There's no way to see
Yeah.
otherwise.
And one of the things I've been bumping up against a lot, I don't know if you've had this experience, Layla, or not, but we're getting a lot of people who are evolved sojourners, even though this may be their first trip to Earth from other planets, you know, and I've been bumping up against many of those, and it's one of the reasons why I have this interest in a group where we're exploring extraterrestrial, you know, and so I want to know more about that too. But that's a whole nother symposium.
I have two people that think they're very new and it's first time on Earth. Two people.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Layla, and for channeling Dolores for us, and for all of the other beings who gave us messages, William Strachky, Pythagoras, Helen Wambach, Joel Whitten, and Joe Fisher. So appreciate it. And we cannot wait to hear from more of them. And there's probably others that we don't even yet know about. So, but you know, we're, as you can tell, she and I are very open to learn from the other side as well as people on this side. So to wrap up, we've got a couple more door prizes. Okay, let's see. Ah, Monica Metz. Yay. So pick a bag and you can pick a book.
Oh, thank you.
You can pick any of the 4 books. Okay. And Emily Page. Woohoo. And you can pick a bag and you can pick a book. Okay. So before we wrap up, any other questions about any other parts of the symposium? I hope you've enjoyed all of the programs. We tried to give you some variety, so there'll be something for everybody. It's like a buffet, you know, of reincarnation thoughts, and this symposium has an energy of its own. When I had the vision of creating it 4 years ago, I never dreamt that it was going to be what it is, but already we have 3 people lined up for next year. As I mentioned, Barbara Graham has, who wrote the What Jonah Knew. She's going to be one of our speakers. Christopher Beisch, who Diane Seaman talked about, he's going to be one of our speakers. And Peter Smith, who wrote a book called Quantum Consciousness, is also going to be a speaker. And there's a 4th person we're talking to, but we haven't quite nailed that one down yet. So next year looks really, really powerful already. We decided that we're going to flip-flop on the West Coast next year, the East Coast the following year. So like I said, it's got a life of its own, but that we're able to do it hybrid. You can join us wherever you are. And thank you so much for being part of this. As I say to the folks in my classes, the energy you bring is part of what makes this so wonderful. The questions that you ask are absolutely spot on. So it inspires us who are doing this work, and I hope it's inspiring all of you to, whether it's remembering a past life, whether it's remembering your soul purpose, whether it's remembering the skills that you've brought from other times, to, oh, hold on. Sorry, there's someone who just showed up.
We're getting a message, Carole.
They don't let you forget. That thing that Dolores Cannon said, imagination is God's playground. And when I got the message from her, I heard John Lennon singing the song Imagine. So I'll leave that with an earbud in your head. Imagine.
John Lennon showed up twice on the symposium, Carole.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And